Hello, I'm reading from Autobiography of a Yogi. I'm starting on the middle of page 36. Amar, we may soon be closely questioned by railroad officials. I'm not underrating my brother's ingenuity. No matter what the outcome, I will not speak untruth. All I ask of you, Mukunda, is to keep still. Don't laugh or grin while I'm talking. At this moment, a European station agent accosted me. He waved a telegram whose import I immediately grasped. Are you running away from home in anger? No. I was glad his choice of words permitted me to make emphatic reply. No anger, but divinest melancholy was responsible, I knew, for my unconventional behavior. The official then turned to Amar. The duel of wits that followed hardly permitted me to maintain the counseled stoic gravity. Where is the third boy? The man injected a full ring of authority in his voice. Come now, speak the truth. Sir, I noticed you were wearing eyeglasses. Can't you see that we are only two? Amar smiled impudently. I am not a magician. I can't conjure up a third boy. The official, noticeably disconcerted by his impertinence, sought a new field of attack. What is your name? I am called Thomas. I am the son of an English mother and a converted Christian Indian father. What is your father's name? I call him Thompson. By this time my inward mirth had reached a zenith. I unceremoniously made for the train, which was providently whistling for departure. Amar followed with the official, who was incredulous and obliging enough to put us into a European compartment. It evidently pained him to think that two half-English boys traveling in the section allotted for natives. After his polite exit, I lay back on the seat and laughed uproariously. Amar wore an expression of blithe satisfaction at having outwitted a veteran European official. On the platform I had contrived to read the telegram. From my brother Anata it went thus: 3 Bengali boys in English clothes running away from home toward Hardwar via Mughal Sirari. Please detain them until my arrival. Ample reward for your services. Amar, I told you not to leave marked timetables in your home. My glance was reproachful. Brother must have found one there. My friend sheepishly acknowledged the thrust. We briefly halted in Bareilly, where Diwar Pasad awaited us with a telegram from Anata. Dawarka tried valiantly to detain us. I convinced him that our flight had not been undertaken lightly. As on a previous occasion, Dawarka refused my invitation to set out for the Himalayas. While our train stood in the station that night, I was half asleep. Amar was awakened by another questioning official. He, too, fell evicted to the hybrid charms of Thomas and Thompson. The train bore us triumphantly into a dawn arrival at Hardwar. The majestic mountains loomed invitingly in the distance. We dashed through the station and entered the freedom of the city crowds. Our first act was to change into native costume, as Anata had somehow penetrated our European disguise. A premonition of capture weighed in my mind. Deeming it advisable to leave Hardwar at once, we bought tickets to proceed north to Rishikesh, a soil long hollowed by the feet of many masters. I had already boarded the train while Amar lagged on the platform, as he was brought to an abrupt halt by a shout from a policeman. An unwelcome guardian, the officer escorted Amar and me to a police station bungalow and took charge of our money. He explained courteously that it was his duty to hold us until my elder brother arrived. Learning that the truant's destination had been the Himalayas, the officer related a strange story. "I see you are crazy about saints. You will never meet a greater man of God than the one I saw only yesterday. My brother officer and I first encountered him 5 days ago. We were patrolling by the Ganges, on a sharp lookout for a certain murderer. Our instructions were to capture him alive or dead. He was known to be masquerading as a sadhu in order to rob pilgrims. A short way before us we spied a figure which resembled the description of the criminal. We ignored our command to stop. He ignored our command to stop. We ran to overpower him. Approaching his back, I wielded my axe with tremendous force. The man's right arm was severed almost completely from the body. Without outcry or any glance at the ghastly wound, the stranger astonishingly continued his swift pace. As we jumped in front of him, he spoke quietly. "I am not the murderer you are seeking." I was deeply mortified to see I had injured the person of a divine-looking sage. Prostrating myself at his feet, I implored his pardon and offered my turban cloth to staunch the heavy spurts of blood. "Son, that was just an understandable mistake on your part." The saint regarded me kindly. "Run along and don't reproach yourself. The beloved mother is taking care of me." He pushed his dangling arm into its stump, and lo, it adhered. The blood inexplicably ceased to flow. "Come to me under yonder tree in 3 days, and you will find me fully healed. Thus you will feel no remorse." Yesterday my brother officer and I went eagerly to the designated spot, and the sadhu was there and allowed us to examine his arm. It bore no scar nor trace of hurt. I am going to Rishikesh, to the Himalayan solitudes. The sadhu blessed us as he departed quickly. I felt that my life had been uplifted through his sanctity. The officer concluded with a pious ejaculation. His experience had obviously moved him beyond his usual depths. With an impressive gesture he handed me a printed clipping about the miracle, in the usual garbled manner of the sensational type of newspaper, not missing, alas, even in India. The reporter's version had been slightly exaggerated. It indicated that the sadhu had been almost decapitated. Amar and I lamented that we had missed the great yogi who could forgive his persecutor in such a Christ-like way. India, materially poor for the last 2 centuries, yet has an inexhaustible fund of divine wealth. Spiritual skyscrapers may occasionally be encountered by the wayside, even by worldly men like this policeman. We thank the officer for relieving our tedium with his marvelous story. He was probably intimating that he was more fortunate than we had met an illumined saint without effort. Our earnest search had ended, not at the feet of a master, but a coarse police station. So near the Himalayas, and yet in our captivity so far. I told Amar I felt doubly impelled to seek freedom. Let us slip away when opportunity offers. We can go on foot to holy Rishikesh. I smiled encouragingly, but my companion had turned pessimist as soon as the stalwart prop of our money had been taken away from us. If we started a trek over such dangerous jungle land, it should finish not in the city of saints, but in the stomach of tigers. Anata and Amar's brother arrived after 3 days. Amar greeted his relative with affectionate relief. I was unreconciled. Anata got no more from me than a severe upbraiding. "I understand how you feel." My brother spoke soothingly. "All I ask of you is to accompany me to Benares to meet a certain sage, and go on to Calcutta to visit our grieving father for a few days. Then you may resume your search here for a master." Amar entered the conversation at this point. to disclaim any intention of returning to Hardware with me. He was enjoying the familial warmth, but I would never abandon the quest for my guru. Our party entrained for Benares. There was a singular and instant response to a prayer. There I had a singular and instant response to a prayer. A clever scheme had been prearranged by Anatta. Before seeing me in Hardwar, he had stopped in Benares to ask a scriptural authority to interview me later. The pundit and his son also had promised Anatta that they would attempt to dissuade me from becoming a sannyasi. Sannyasi has an asterisk. The asterisk says literally renunciant, from Sanskrit verb roots to cast aside. Anatta took me to their home. The son, a young man of ebullient manner, greeted me in the courtyard. He engaged me in a lengthy philosophic discourse. Professing to have a clairvoyant knowledge of my future, he discountenanced my idea of being a monk. You will meet continual misfortune and be unable to find God if you insist on deserting your ordinary responsibilities. You cannot work out your past karma without worldly experiences. Karma has an asterisk. It says effects of past actions in this or former life, from the Sanskrit verb kri, to do. Immortal words from the Bhagavad Gita rose to my lips in reply. Even he with the worst karma who ceaselessly meditates on me quickly loses the effects of his past actions. Becoming a high-souled being, he soon attains perennial peace. Know this for certain: the devotee who puts his trust in me never perishes. From the forceful prognostications of the young man had slightly shaken my confidence. With all the fervor of my heart, I prayed silently to God. Please solve my bewilderment and answer me, right here and now, if thou doth desire me to lead the life of a renunciant or a worldly man. I noticed a sadhu of noble countenance standing just outside the compound of the pundit's house. Evidently he had overheard the spirited conversation between the self-styled clairvoyant and me, for the stranger called me to his side. I felt a tremendous power flowing through his calm eyes. Son, don't listen to that ignoramus. In response to your prayer, the Lord tells me to assure you that your sole path in this life is that of a renunciant. With astonishment as well as gratitude, I smiled happily at his decisive message. Come away from that man. The ignoramus was calling me from the courtyard. My saintly guide raised his hand in blessing and slowly departed. The sadhu is just as crazy as you are. It was the hoary-headed pundit who made his charming observation. He and his son were gazing at me lugubriously. I have heard that he too has left the home in a vague search for God. I turned away. To Anatta I remarked that I would not engage in any further discussion with our host. My discouraged brother agreed to an immediate departure. We soon entrained for Calcutta. Mr. Detective, how did you discover I had fled with two companions? I vented my lively curiosity to Anatta during our homeward journey. He smiled mischievously. At your school I found that Amar had left his classroom and had not returned. I went to his home the next morning and unearthed a marked timetable. Amar's father was just leaving by carriage and was talking to the coachman. My son will not ride with me to his school this morning. He has disappeared, the father moaned. I heard from a brother coachman that your son and two others dressed in European suits boarded the train at Howrah Station, the man stated. They made a present of their leather shoes to the cab driver. Thus, I had three clues: the timetable, the trio of boys, and the English clothing. I was listening to Anata's disclosures with mingled mirth and vexation. Our generosity to the coachman had been slightly misplaced. Of course, I rushed to send telegrams to station officials in all the cities that Amar had underlined on the timetable. We had checked Bareilly, so I wired your friend Dalwalkar there. After inquiries in our Calcutta neighborhood, I learned that cousin Jatinada had been absent one night, but had arrived home the following morning in European garb. I sought him out and invited him to dinner. He accepted, quite disarmed by my friendly manner. On the way, I led him unsuspectingly to a police station. He was surrounded by several officers whom I had previously selected for their ferocious appearance. Under their formidable gaze, Janata agreed to account for his mysterious conduct. I started for the Himalayas in a buoyant spiritual mood, he explained. Inspiration filled me with prospect of meeting the masters, but as soon as Mukunda said, during our ecstasies in the Himalayan caves, tigers will be spellbound and sit around us like tame pussies, my spirits froze. Beads of perspiration formed on my brow. What then, I thought, if the vicious nature of the tigers be not changed through the power of our spiritual trance? Shall they treat us with the kindness of house cats? In my mind's eye, I already saw myself the compulsory inmate of some tiger stomach, entering there not at once with the whole body, but by installments in several parts. My anger at Jatinda's vanishment evaporated in laughter. The hilarious explanation on the train was worth all the anguish he had caused me. I must confess to a slight feeling of satisfaction. Jatinda, too, had not escaped an encounter with the police. Anata, and there's an asterisk there, it says, I always addressed him as Anata Da. Da is a respectful suffix that brothers and sisters add to the name of their eldest brother. You, Anata, you are a born sleuthhound. My glance of amusement was not without some exasperation, and I shall tell Jatinda I am glad he was prompted by no mood of treachery, but as it appeared only by the prudent instinct of self-preservation. At home in Calcutta, Father touchingly requested me to curb my roving feet until at least the completion of my high school studies. In my absence, he had lovingly hatched a plot by arranging a saintly pundit, Swami Kibbalananda, to come regularly to the house. The sage will be your Sanskrit tutor, my parent announced confidently. Father hoped to satisfy my religious yearnings by instruction from a learned philosopher, but the tables were subtly turned. My new teacher, far from offering intellectual aridities, fanned the embers of my God aspiration. Unknown to Father, Swami Kibbalananda was an exalted disciple of Lahari Mahasaya. The peerless guru had possessed thousands of disciples, silently drawn to him by the irresistibility of his divine magnetism. I learned later that Lahari Mahasaya had often characterized Kibbalananda as rishi, or illuminated sage. And there's an asterisk there. At the time of our meeting, Kibbalananda had not yet joined the Swami order and was generally called Shri Mahasaya. To avoid confusion with the name of Lahari Mahasaya and master of Mahasaya, Chapter 9. I am referring to my Sanskrit tutor only by his latter monastic name of Swami Kibla Halandanda. His biography has been recently published in Bengali. Born in the Khulna district of Bengal in 1863, Kibalananda gave up his body in Banaras at the age of 68. His family name is Ashutashkataji. Luxuriant curls framed my tutor's handsome face. His dark eyes were guileless, with the transparency of a child's. His eyes were guileless with the transparency of a child's. All of the movements of his slight body were marked by restful deliberation. His ever gentle and loving, he was firmly established in the infinite consciousness. Many of our happy hours together were spent in deep Kriya meditation. Kibalahanda was a noted authority on the ancient Shastras, or sacred books. His erudition had earned him the title of Shastri Mahasasha, by which he was usually addressed. But my progress in Sanskrit scholarship was unnoteworthy. I sought only opportunities to forsake prosaic grammar and to talk about yoga and Lahari Mahasaya. My tutor obliged me one day by telling me something of his own life with the master. Rarely fortunate, I was able to remain near Lahari Mahasaya for 10 years. His Benares home was my nightly goal of pilgrimage. The Guru was always present in a small front parlor on the first floor. As he sat in lotus posture on a backless wooden seat, his disciples garlanded him in a semicircle. His eyes sparkled and danced with the joy of the divine. They were ever half closed, peering through the inner telescopic orb into a sphere of eternal bliss. He seldom spoke at length. Occasionally his gaze would focus on a student in need of help. Healing words then poured out like an avalanche of light. An indescribable peace blossomed within me at the master's glance. I was permeated with his fragrance as though through a lotus of infinity. To be with him even without exchanging a word for days was an experience which changed my entire being. And any invisible barrier rose in the path of my concentration, I would meditate at the Guru's feet. There the most tenuous states came easily within my grasp. Such perceptions eluded me in the presence of lesser teachers. The Master was a living temple of God, whose secret doors were open to all disciples through devotion. Lahari Mahasaya was no bookish interpreter of the scriptures. Effortlessly he dipped into the divine library. Foam of words and spray of thoughts gushed from the fountain of his omnipresence. He had the wondrous clavis that unlocked the profound philosophical science hidden ages ago in the Vedas. There's an asterisk here. Over 100 canonical books of the ancient four Vedas were extant. In his journal, Emerson paid this tribute to Vedic thought. It is sublime as heat and night and a breathless ocean. It contains every religious sentiment, all grand ethics which visit in turn each noble poetic mind. It is of no use to put away the book. If I trust myself in the words or in a boat upon a pond, nature makes a Brahmin of me presently. Eternal necessity, eternal compensation, unfathomable power, unbroken silence. This is her creed. The peace she saith to me, and purity and absolute abandonment. These panaceas expiate all sin and bring you to the beatitude of the 8 gods. Starting again. If I asked to explain the different planes of consciousness mentioned in the ancient text, he would smilingly assent. I will undergo these states and presently tell you what I perceive. He was thus diametrically unlike the teachers who committed Scripture to memory and then give forth unrealized abstractions. Please expound the holy stanzas as the meaning occurs to you. The taciturn guru often gave this instruction to a nearby disciple. I will guide your thoughts that the right interpretation be uttered. In this way many of Lahara Masaya's perceptions came to be recorded with voluminous commentaries by various students. The Master never counseled slavish belief. Words are only shells, he said. Win conviction of God's presence through your own joyous contact and meditation. No matter what the disciples' problems, the Guru advised Kriya Yoga for its solution. The yogic key will not lose its efficiency when I am no longer present in the body to guide you. This technique cannot be bound, filed, and forgotten in the manner of theoretical inspirations. Continue ceaselessly on your path to liberation through Kriya, whose power lies in practice. I myself consider Kriya the most effective device of salvation through self-effort ever to be evolved in man's search for the infinite. Kibalananda concluded with his earnest testimony. Through its use, the omnipotent God, hidden in all men, became visibly incarnate in the flesh of Lahara Mahasa and a number of his disciples. A Christ-like miracle by Lahara Mahasa took place in Kibalananda's presence. A saintly tutor recounted the story one day, his eyes remote from the Sanskrit text on the table before us. A blind disciple, Ramu, aroused my active pity. Should he have no light in his eyes when he faithfully served our Master in whom the divine was fully blazing? One morning I sought to speak to Ramu, but he sat for patient hours fanning the Guru with his handmade palm-like punkaha. When the devotee finally left the room, I followed him. Ramu, how long have you been blind? From birth, sir. Never have my eyes been blessed by the glimpse of the sun. Our omnipotent Guru can help you. Please make a supplication. The following day, Ramu diffidently approached Lahara Masaya. The disciple felt almost ashamed to ask that physical wealth be added to his spiritual superabundance. Master, the illuminator of the cosmos is in you. I pray you to bring his light into my eyes, that I perceive the sun's lesser glow. Ramu, someone has connived to put me in a difficult position. I have no healing power. Sir, the infinite one within you can certainly heal. That is indeed different, Ramu. God's limit is nowhere. He who ignites the stars and the cells of flesh with mysterious life effulgence can surely bring the luster of vision into my eyes. The Master touched Ramu's forehead at the point between his eyebrows. There's an asterisk there. The seat of the single or spiritual eye. At death, the consciousness of man is usually drawn to this holy spot, accounting for the upraised eyes found in the dead. Keep your mind concentrated there and frequently chant the name of the prophet Rama. There's a cross there. It says, the central sacred figure of the Sanskrit epic Ramayana. For 7 days, the splendor of the sun shall have a special dawn for you. Lo, in 1 week it was so. For the first time Ramu beheld the fair face of nature. The omniscient one had unerringly directed his disciple to repeat the name of Brahma, adored by him above all other saints. Ramu's faith was devotionally plowed in soil in which the Guru's powerful seed of permanent healing sprouted. Kebalananda was silent for a moment, then he paid a further tribute to his Guru. It was evident in all miracles performed by Lahari Messiah that he never allowed the ego principle to consider itself a causative force. There's a double cross there. It says the ego principle, ahamkara, literally I do, is the root cause of dualism, or the seeming separation between man and his creator. Ahamkara brings human beings under the sway of Maya, cosmic delusion. By the perfection of his surrender to the prime healing power, the Master enabled it to flow freely through him. The numerous bodies that were spectacularly healed through Mahaya's Lahara Masahaya eventually had to feed the flames of cremation. But the silent spiritual awakenings he effected, the Christ-like disciples he fashioned, are his imperishable miracles. I never became a Sanskrit scholar. Kebalahanda taught me a diviner syntax. There's a couple of photographs. This is the Swami, Sanskrit teacher, and Yogananda's boyhood home. Okay, y'all, that's it. Talk to you later. Bye.